Hello and welcome to Grody and Unprofessional. My name is Justin McMenamy, and my mission is to share both profitable and painful leadership lessons acquired over a 20-year career as a misfit in corporate America. In this episode, I contend it is best practice to cover your tenders if you find yourself as a matador in a corporate bullfight. Welcome to the seventh and final installment of my survey of Kelly Johnson's 14 Rules of Management. This list, authored in the 1950s for the organization Skunk Works, acts as an instruction manual for leaders seeking to build and maintain an island of innovation, agility, and creativity within an organizational ocean of bureaucracy, rigidity, and fraternity. The goal of these episodes is to testify to the brilliance of the 14 rules by sharing a decade of leadership experiences within Precision Planting, a company chartered much the same way as Skunk Works was within Lockheed. During my tenure at Precision Planting, we were a division set apart. We sought to serve a market segment that was both distinct from and complementary to our various parent companies. In pursuit of our goals, senior leadership afforded us freedom to define and maintain a distinct set of processes and cultural norms separate from the broader company. In return, executives were rewarded with a business which delivered more than 18% annual growth, leading to a tenfold revenue increase inside of a decade. In this episode, we focus on the phantom 15th rule of Kelly Johnson's list. But before we head there, I want to spend a few minutes on just how hard it is for the modern executive to create or even acquire and maintain a true Skunk Works organization. While it may seem that 18% annual growth and tenfold sales increases provide ample evidence in support of the investment, the practical realities are much more complex. Each morning, before the sun rises, CEOs awake to the tireless, unforgiving, and often amnesiac pursuit of growth. For executives lucky enough to lead during a market boom or in the early years of market formation, it can seem as if growth can be found around every corner. However, as markets invariably saturate, technology development slows, and competition stiffens, growth becomes increasingly elusive. In these mature markets, leaders look more and more to mergers and acquisition as a growth lever. Having myself been a part of 9 acquisitions, both from the acquiring and the acquired side of the table, it has fascinated me to learn that far and away, acquisitions are viewed through a narrow lens of accelerating growth via the rapid addition of resources. Clay Christensen, however, in his work at Harvard Business School, highlights 2 distinct acquisitional strategies. He then proceeds to define distinct playbooks best employed under each acquisition prospectus. Christensen writes that acquisitional growth can be pursued either through the acquisition of another company's resources or through the acquisition of another company's business model. Resource acquisition is by far the most common of the two. In a resource acquisition, the acquirer aims to extend their current business model through increased scale or leverage. Rather than valuing the whole of the target acquisition, the acquirer values specific components of the acquired business, such as people, physical assets, technology, products, or customers. A simple example of a resource acquisition would be the purchase of a competitor with the aim of acquiring their customers. By increasing the customer list, the purchasing company desires to increase sales while achieving greater asset utilization and lower proportional overhead. Another example of a resource acquisition would be a technology purchase, demonstrated by Apple's 2008 purchase of VII, a microchip manufacturer. In this example, Apple is not seeking to increase sales by continuing PA Semi's operations as a microchip supplier to the free market. Rather, by acquiring a technological capability, they are seeking to enable deeper product integration and potentially material cost reductions of existing and future Apple products. In both instances, the acquired company is brought on board to support the expansion of the existing business model and market strategy. Christensen highlights, and consultants the world around agree, the playbook for resource acquisitions is straightforward. In pursuit of the greatest return on capital, the right thing to do is to deconstruct and integrate the acquired into your ecosystem as quickly as possible. These actions very often include laying off leadership and other central staff, shutting down redundant locations, product line consolidation, and rapid back office and business process integration. Considering the regularity of resource acquisitions, financial markets generally understand how to value and discount these acquisitions into expected future earnings. History has shown that most often the future value of a resource acquisition is fully accounted for in the share price of the acquirer within 1 year. The other category described by Clay Christensen is business model acquisition. Much less has been written on business model acquisition, in large part because they occur far less frequently. A business model acquisition occurs when the acquiring company seeks to purchase, or better stated, invest in another way of doing business or a different market approach. These acquisitions do not principally seek to bolster the existing profit engine, but rather to acquire and fuel a second complementary profit engine. A business model acquisition can be considered strategy diversification rather than strategy acceleration. For this reason, business model acquisitions often target promising companies in early-stage markets. It must be noted that for many reasons, business model acquisitions are less common and more rarely successful than resource acquisitions. The first being shareholder short-sightedness. Historically, the investment community grossly underestimates the future scale and profitability of emerging markets. For that reason, business model acquisitions are steeply discounted by investors in the period immediately following acquisition, therefore placing greater burden on leadership to defend their transaction through demonstrated progress and profitability, which leads directly to the second reason, a lack of patience. Emerging markets take time, are often unpredictable, and rarely grow along the patternistic exponential curves so often seen in pitch decks. As market growth lags previous financial models, executive teams must deliver new spin, new insight, or a new narrative with each passing quarter. Otherwise, investor sentiment is likely to sour. Third, the comparatively small size of early-stage markets causes headwinds for executives hoping to incubate a business model acquisition. Executives are most directly measured by the anticipated growth rate of the entire enterprise, not the growth rate of a presently insignificant business unit. If we consider 100% year-over-year growth in an early-stage market, that often falls into the round-off error of the enterprise's overall growth calculation. The combination of these three headwinds, short-sightedness, impatience, and insignificance, often forms a storm front of internal and external accusations of divided attention, dilution of effort, or neglect of the core business, even during periods of rapid growth in emerging markets. The cries for synergy from shareholders and internal business leaders place the executive in a very difficult position, and potentially one they did not foresee. On one hand, the business model acquisition playbook calls for maintaining the acquired business separately from the broader corporate ecosystem. On the other hand, shareholders and incumbent business leaders are more comfortable and more familiar with the playbook of resource acquisitions. It just makes sense to the majority to dismember and absorb the acquired. Unlike resource acquisitions, which are best dissolved and integrated rapidly, business model acquisitions must be vigorously isolated from the metrics, mindsets, and culture of the broader company. Leaders skilled in mature market competition must lead differently and be measured differently than leaders tasked with simultaneously building and exploring an emerging technology, market approach, or business model. Businesses which attempt a single governance structure for both the continued optimization and market harvesting techniques of established markets, as well as the fast pivots and risk tolerance required of an emerging market, will find that new market growth will always be a goal, but never a reality. A critical ingredient in sustainable business model acquisition is a loosely coupled connection between those that explore and those that optimize. This strategy flies in the face of best practices of synergy, globalization, leverage, integration, standardization, and governance. All critical aspects of resource acquisition, but a poison pill of business model acquisition. This tension between the mindsets of existing business optimization and new market development are the reason most business model acquisitions ultimately devolve into poorly executed resource acquisitions, as the leader is pressed into dissecting and distributing the acquisition into the broader company. This is the reason the authors of Play Bigger say that no CEO that fears losing their job can withstand the pressures of new market creation, and why organizations like Skunk Works are so rare in the modern publicly traded company. With that being said, let's proceed to Kelly Johnson's phantom 15th rule of management. The 15th rule of management states, starve before doing business with the bleeping Navy. They don't know what they want and will drive you up a wall. They will break either your heart or a more exposed part of your anatomy. As I mentioned in the previous episode, Rule 15 does not appear in most published versions of the list. Ben Rich writes in the book Skunk Works that this rule was only known by word of mouth. It was verbal wisdom passed from one generation of employees to the next. This is completely understandable, as it literally categorizes a potential customer, the Navy, as incompetent and a problem to be avoided. I have elected to include this rule in my survey as I see Rule 15 as pure strategic brilliance. The body of literature I have referenced throughout these episodes and Kelly Johnson's rules repeatedly point to the fact that innovation and optimization are nearly impossible to maintain in a single environment. A leader that desires creativity and agility must allow for separation from the incumbent business. This includes separate initiatives, processes, compensation structures, metrics, budgeting, financing, and project definition, to name a few. The leader that seeks to intermingle the disruptors with the establishment will invariably find that corporate antibodies will attack and destroy the abnormality. Often this literature focuses on the importance of lines of demarcation between the disruptive division and the parent company. Kelly Johnson in Rule 15 logically and brilliantly extends the lines of separation to include customers and suppliers. This principle boils down to a simple yet profoundly important observation. Like parent companies, customers and suppliers also possess cultures and norms. The cultures and processes of others intersect and interact with your culture as soon as you enter a commercial agreement. meaning it is exceedingly difficult to be an agile, nimble, risk-taking, market-disruptive organization if either your supply base or your customers are comprised of risk-averse, fear-based, cautious, fast-following organizations. In plain language, some customers are poisonous to your way of operating. Some suppliers are detrimental to the mission, even if they are able to meet cost and quality metrics. An organization should cultivate suppliers, partners, and customers which are similarly motivated, similarly structured, and operate at the same tempo. You cannot hitch a speedboat to a garbage barge and expect that the speedboat will be unaffected. The point of the 15th rule is that you are as much or more lashed to your suppliers and customers as you are to your parent company. During my decade within precision planting, we unabashedly prioritized our customer relationships, favoring those that matched our speed, passion, candor, transparency, honesty, and lack of bureaucracy. The ag tech market is like countless other markets, and that there are many commercial paths one can take to the end user. For many of our competitors, the most highly sought-after path was through established, globally recognized distributors. In our industry, these are companies like John Deere, C&H, or AGCO. For another industry like consumer goods, these are companies like Walmart, Amazon, or Target. When working with a distributor, you transact business with just one customer, and they, in turn, offer your product to thousands of end users. At first blush, this arrangement seems like an easy button. All you have to do is develop a really good product. Then for a token fee, the distributor takes care of the rest. As my friend Matthew said, wide is the road that leads to destruction. No matter the industry, ease carries constraints. Shelf placement constraints, branding constraints, inventory constraints, financial constraints. Distributors are able to offer thousands of products to potentially millions of customers because of standardization. For an agile, nimble, creative company seeking to challenge the status quo, seeking to create a new category, seeking to do something that no one else has done before, industry standardization can mean death. There is no room for creativity within standardization. If my friend Matthew was unable to convince you, just watch a few episodes of Shark Tank. Invariably, an entrepreneur with a successful website, a successful product, and a social media presence tells the sharks that they desire to get their product into Walmart. Mark Cuban always yells, "Don't do it." A company's life gets harder, not easier, when they hand over the delivery and presentation of their product to another company. Profits generally go down, not up, when you reach for the easy button. Our approach was to bear the costs of building a brand along with the sales, support, and marketing infrastructure required to bring our products to market on our own terms. This meant bypassing the large distributors and selling more directly to customers. While this placed an additional commercial burden on our organization, it placed us in direct contact with the customer. And most importantly, it kept us as the masters of our destiny. If a product wasn't selling as expected, we only had ourselves to blame, and we had the levers to quickly adapt. When your product sits on someone else's shelf and it's not selling, you largely find yourself begging for priority. It may be an easier ride to go through distributors, but you are the passenger in that vehicle, not the driver. Over time, the full brilliance of this strategy came into view. By successfully marketing and selling our products through our own channel, we generated a version of FOMO within the large distributors in the industry. You may ask, what does a big international distributor care about a small startup offering their products to the market independently? Our success in the marketplace was at the direct expense of customer loyalty for the large distributors. Meaning customers that used to buy the entirety of their products from one distributor were now splitting their purchases between the distributor and us. As news of this customer migration trickled back to the managers of the large international brands, a sense of urgency would spring up within the distributor to find a way to incorporate our technology into their product offering. A couple points here. First, market leaders, and in particular, long-standing market leaders, are often comfortable, conservative, and risk-averse. Therefore, if your product or marketing in any way breaks the established market hierarchy or status quo, you are likely to die of old age before the establishment opens their arms to your product, unless the customer tells them they need to. Nothing moves a market titan like their customers buying from someone else. Therefore, as a disruptor, if you can move the customers, you can move the titan. By targeting the customer directly and teaching them about new technologies and market approaches, we moved the customers, which in turn brought the titans to us. It makes all the difference in a negotiation who approaches who and who feels the greater sense of urgency. There is a world of difference as a small, innovative technology company between you calling upon large, bureaucratic, status quo organizations hoping to impress them with new technology, and a bureaucrat from a status quo organization requesting a meeting with you because their CEO told them they need to fix the glitch, no matter what. With that as a backdrop assumption, it was great sport to welcome industry executives to our little farm shop in the middle of nowhere, knowing they were about to enter a negotiation unlike any they had previously experienced. Because, unlike any other potential supplier, we were suspicious of doing business with them under the implications of Kelly Johnson's 15th rule. We were not incentivized to risk the whole of our speed, creativity, autonomy, and agility for the mirage of a supply agreement with an organization which would drive us up a wall while either breaking our heart or a more exposed part of our anatomy. One method we used to set the tone early in negotiations was to say, we are interested to understand the value you would bring to this partnership, considering our current distribution methods are successfully reaching our shared customer. Be sure to drop just a little extra emphasis on the word shared. It's a gentle reminder that the reason why they're sitting in our crappy little conference room was because their CEO was sick and tired of the waves of formerly loyal customers, which are now shared. One of my favorite instances of the tail wagging the dog occurred when one of the world's largest distributors expressed interest in considering integration of our technology into their factory. It was widely known in the industry that this company for years had been slumping in key markets, in part because their homegrown technologies had fallen behind market expectations. As was customary, we invited the potential customer to our humble farm shop in the middle of a cornfield. The meeting kicked off with a highly confident Brahma bull of a man exclaiming, "This is how it's going to go." He then proceeded to lay out the commercial terms required of companies so honored with the opportunity of doing business with his organization. To no one's surprise, all aspects of financial, commercial, and technical risk would be placed in our lap, while his organization was in charge of setting pace, pricing, and patterns of our relationship. As I remember, he threw out the old, "You better move quickly because I'm likely to wake up tomorrow and think better of working with such a small and insignificant business like yours." We graciously informed him that we were quite pleased with the present market conditions, letting it slip that we were selling 15 times their predicted volumes through a more direct and profitable means to the market. We also shared the tidbit that it was our understanding that in most instances, the customers he claimed to represent were already purchasing from us. We said we would consider his offer and get back to him. A couple weeks later, we delivered a highly redlined version of their contract. We removed or neutered clauses relating to guaranteed cost reductions, volume-based discounting, inventory assurances, as well as several other formerly one-sided clauses. As the steam rolled out of his ears, he informed us that under no circumstances would his company ever make such concessions. He represented a global company, and it shocked him that we were so foolish to miss this strategic opportunity and so naive to think his business would operate under such egregious terms. We thanked him for his time and informed him that unfortunately, we just couldn't pencil out the increased overhead and the risk that this contract introduced. He marched out of the conference room, assuring us we would never meet again. It was about a month later that his boss signed a version of the supply agreement which substantially represented the redline copy we had proposed. To some, the above negotiation tactics are merely an example of hardball or a well-executed bluff strategy. I cannot emphasize enough that we knew that organizations like the one represented in this negotiation were dominated by slow-moving, risk-averse leaders that thought to leverage, threaten, and bully suppliers. For us to enter into a contractual agreement with companies cut from this cloth was to put our culture at risk. The truth of the matter is we were willing to do business with these organizations, but only through an atypical set of commercial terms, which ensured our continued autonomy, liberty, and proximity to the customer. Another story that comes to mind, which highlights the importance of a properly defined customer relationship, comes from a conversation I had with an engineering manager from another large distributor we sold products to. We had worked with this company for many years, and overall the relationship served both parties' needs. Across the arc of our relationship, both organizations had grown in market share, and we had been able to maintain a loosely coupled relationship with them. This, of course, was not natural for them, as their company culture much preferred to bully and manipulate their suppliers. On occasion, we would uncover instances of them recruiting our engineers or contacting our suppliers in an effort to bypass our contractual agreements. You know, all part of the underbelly of working with the easy button. In one conversation, an engineering manager called and fired off a list of features he wanted to see added to a certain product. These features included changes in packaging, performance, physical design changes, and of course, all of these changes should be accompanied by a pricing improvement. He closed his comments with the classic Goliath maneuver. I can imagine that since we are probably more than 50% of your business, you will implement these suggestions with some urgency. I must confess, I took maybe just a little bit too much pleasure in my reply. "Oh, I'm sorry, there must be some confusion. Your estimate is off by an order of magnitude. And seeing as you can't go up from 50% by 10 times, and then I just trailed off. He shot back, "Are you telling me that I am only 5% of your business?" "That's right," I replied. He then said, "Well, I'm guessing then that nothing I have asked for is going to happen, is it?" I said, "Well, I'll take a look at our resource availability and project prioritization, and I'll get back to you." That reminds me. I actually need to get back to him, don't I? As I mentioned earlier, our caution around partners extended not only to customers, but also to suppliers. Anyone that has been in product design knows that some suppliers are nimble and others are rigid. Some suppliers are hungry and others are content. Some have competitive cost structures and others have private jets. We did our best to select suppliers that were similarly sized, similarly ambitious, and similarly flexible as we were. There were times, however, when a product design all but required us to work with a large, established supplier. The type that is generally not interested in working with companies of our size. Like with customers, we were willing to entertain the arrangement, but we did so cautiously so as to not sacrifice autonomy and agility. In one instance, a component required a manufacturing process which only a few companies in the U.S. were able to perform. The process had been developed for and was regularly utilized in the medical and aerospace industries. These industries are similar to one another in that they are known for exacting precision, insane cleanliness standards, and rigid process conformance. They are not, however, known for tight profit margins or low piece part costs. Therefore, we were fully prepared for their quote to include allowances for more glass, more granite, and more mahogany in their headquarters. As it turns out, we didn't even get that far, as they were clearly uninterested in working with us. We had no leverage, and they had no risk of inaction. Over the next year, an engineer on our team worked tirelessly to develop the manufacturing processes needed for our component. After more than 100 iterations, we successfully developed the process and started producing functional prototypes. We set up a second meeting with the supplier, this time bringing along our prototype. In the meeting, we showed them the working prototype and simply said, "This is the type of thing we were wondering if you could help us make." They said, "Where did you get that?" betraying their uneasiness. "Oh, this old thing? Since we last spoke, we learned how to make them ourselves. And now what we're trying to do is decide whether we should build them or if we should have you guys build them." There it was. The risk of inaction is now literally sitting on the table in front of them. For obvious reasons, their interest in working with us rose rapidly. I forget who it was that said, "Most things of value in this world start with a material that is either mined or harvested, and both entail hard work." We were about the business of the hard work to mine or grow value in our negotiations with customers and suppliers. The way to avoid being thrown around by the prestige suppliers and customers in your industry is to demonstrate your willingness and ability to take on the hard work of doing it yourselves. As we wrap, it is clear Kelly Johnson and Ben Rich were strong believers in the 14 rules of management and their ability to aid in the care and curation of Skunk Works within the broader Lockheed Martin gravitational field. Ben Rich believed it so much, he wrote, "Any company whose fortune depends on developing new technologies should have a Skunk Works operation." History has proven, however, that it is difficult, if not almost impossible, in the era of investor-first business strategies to run an organization like Skunk Works. The drumbeat for predictable, logical, robust earnings growth prevents most successful companies from taking on big technical or commercial bets. Additionally, the siren song of efficiency, alignment, and standardization prevents most CEOs from initiating any significant efforts which do not align with or equip the broader strategy. In the book Orbiting the Giant Hairball, Gordon McKenzie defines the ideal state for any group chartered with countercultural innovation as a satellite orbiting the organizational hairball. The hairball serves a critical role as it aids the satellite by providing much-needed gravitational stability. But the relationship between the two objects must be an orbital relationship. There must not be direct contact between the planet and the satellite. Otherwise, the satellite becomes entangled in the hairball and loses the speed, agility, and elasticity required for success. I am not aware that Gordon McKenzie was a rocket scientist, and I assure you that I am not one either. But a study of the governing equations of orbital motion show that there is an altitude called geosynchronous orbit at which a satellite just keeps going without any need for propulsion. As long as nothing changes, the satellite will stay in orbit forever. Organizational physics, however, are much different. Things are always changing. The size of the hairball, the size of the satellite, the CEO's political capital, tough economic conditions, other acquisitions entering the orbit, all of these things act to either push the satellite into deep space or pull it into the hairball. All of this to say, a 70-year span of Skunk Works maintaining orbit around Lockheed is a testament to a lot of effort, energy, and well-spent political capital. And in the same vein, it was a great honor and a great joy helping pilot the precision planting satellite over my decade in the organization. I cannot express enough gratitude to all involved who helped keep us in orbit. For those that wish to share comments, praises, or large sums of money, you can reach me at justin@grody.io. For those that think that Kelly Johnson's 15th rule is hogwash, I would ask you to look up the IX529C shadow. It is a shining example of attempting to collaborate with a customer that doesn't know what they want and is willing to break your heart or another exposed part of your anatomy. Thanks for your time.